Former Vice President Mike Pence will deliver his first public speech since leaving office tonight. He's doing it in the same state which received then-candidate Joe Biden's struggling presidential campaign, South Carolina. Pence is slated to address a conservative evangelical group. His appearance fuels speculation about a possible 2024 presidential bid. South Carolina is an early open primary state. CBS News political reporter Adam Brewster is in Columbia, South Carolina, following the speech, and he joins me now. Hi there, Adam. So why this group, and what is the former vice president expected to focus on?
Well, as you mentioned, this is a conservative evangelical group. Likely you will have faith leaders, Republican activists, potentially, some local elected officials in the audience tonight to hear what the former vice president has to say. This is a group that, held a forum ahead of the 2016 Republican primary, and you can see they're starting to kick off their 2024 operation. There are these conservative groups that are often influential in the Republican nominating process in some of the other early states.
Tell us a little bit more about that. What's the connection between the Palmetto Family Council and presidential nominations?
So, as I mentioned, they held a forum. Of course, I covered the Iowa caucuses. A lot of groups hold forums as they take their turn in the spotlight and get a chance to kind of focus on the issues that people in their group are concerned about. Now, I think tonight, when the former vice president speaks, of course, it's 100 days, since he left office. I don't know that his address tonight will necessarily be a response to what we heard from President Biden last night, but rather highlighting some of the accomplishments from the Trump administration and contrasting that possibly with what we've seen from the Biden administration during its first 100 days. There may be some talk from the former vice president about how this is not what some voters thought that they would be getting out of the Biden administration, but certainly expect him to highlight some of the things that he brought to the table, and also his faith. He's a very faithful person. This is an audience that should be very friendly towards him tonight.
Yes, well, this morning, it's interesting. Former President Donald Trump told Fox Business he is 100% thinking about another presidential bid. Here's some of what he said about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as a potential running mate.
Would you consider a running mate in Ron DeSantis? A lot of conversation about your relationship with Ron DeSantis. You're seeing him more in Florida. Would he be your pick for VP?
He's a friend of mine. I endorsed Ron, and after I endorsed him, he took off like a rocket ship. He's done a great job as governor. A lot of people like that. I'm just saying what I read and what you read. They love that ticket. But certainly Ron would be considered. He's a great guy.
So DeSantis is seen as a potential presidential contender himself. So, Adam, how likely is it that former Vice President Pence would compete against his former boss for the nomination?
I think that that's the question that a lot of these potential 2024 candidates are thinking about as they contemplate whether to run for office. There will be a waiting game, certainly, among some of them to see if former President Trump decides to actually take the leap and run for president again. Certainly, we expect the former president to be very active in the 2022 midterm cycle. It would be surprising if he said that he was not going to run for president before the midterm elections took place. But we heard from former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who's the former governor of South Carolina in this state just a couple of weeks ago, say if former President Trump runs again, she will not be running in 2024, and that she would be supporting Mr. Trump. Certainly there are Republicans who would take an approach that the Republican Party needs to go a different direction. But there are so many other potential candidates who would occupy a similar lane to the former president and just know that they would have a really, really hard time beating him. I think even those who oppose him know that he will be very, very tough to beat in a Republican primary if he runs again. So it's going to be a bit of a waiting game. That dust will start to settle a bit after the 2022 midterms. But I expect until we hear a definitive answer from Mr. Trump one way or the other, a lot of folks, potentially Vice President Mike Pence, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, several senators, they may just be waiting to hear what former President Trump does.
Yeah, it's very much an open question right now. Well, former Vice President Pence notably refused to grant former President Trump's request to block the certification of President Joe Biden's Electoral College victory. Adam, what do we know about the status of their relationship now?
Well, of course, back in January, after January 6th, the attack at the Capitol, we know that they were a frostier relationship. Certainly the vice president was very loyal to Mr. Trump during his presidency. We're told a senior Pence aide says that they are, have a friendly relationship now, and that they've spoken several times by phone, including recently after the former vice president underwent a heart procedure earlier this month. He has been recovering well. He's certainly back out on the road, had a full day today, so it appears he's doing well there. And I think one of the things that people are interested in tonight is to hear how he speaks about former President Trump, how Mike Pence speaks about Mr. Trump, because, we've heard from the former president privately. The Washington Post reported that he told donors earlier this month that he was disappointed in Pence for not blocking certification of the election. So we don't know yet what the former vice president will say about his, about Mr. Trump. I would imagine he'll say something about him one way or the other, but at least highlighting the accomplishments from that administration. But exactly what he says is certainly something that I and many other people will be watching for tonight.
Yes, we'll be so interested to hear Adam Brewster for us. Adam, thank you very much.
Thanks, Elaine.